WBJC, Baltimore, the radio station of the Community College of Baltimore.
And now, by recording from New York, WBJFM presents Inside Gene Shepard.
Listen, I have a very special thing I wanted to do. You know, it's funny. Sometimes I get an idea, see, of a show that I want to do, and I put it off to one side, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. In other words, sometimes if you put an idea off, and it eventually then disseminates, you never do it. On the other hand, sometimes if you put an idea off, it even gets better. Now, when I first wanted to do this show, it didn't have as much relevance, although there would be no way for me to know it. It didn't have enough relevance that it would have, let's say, today, because of the economic situation that we find ourselves in right now. Now, what I want to do here, this is going to be a special show, and you won't hear this probably any other place. In fact, I know you won't. And I'm going to say another thing, too. What I have here in my hands, I would guess, is probably the only example extant. I would say this is probably the only one that exists. Now, you can't say that about many things, actually. But I feel confident that this is if it is matched by somebody else's, there probably aren't many of them. Not more than, I'd say, probably a half a dozen at the very outside. Now, what I have here, this was sent to me by a friend that I have in Detroit. Now, a year or two ago, I did a show in Detroit for the Chrysler Automobile Executive Club. This is the execs of Chrysler, and after the show, we had a lot of drinks and talking, and around we went all over Detroit, and just had an evening, you know, and in the middle of the evening, I got talking with one of the executives there that was in our party, and I said, in casual passing, I says, you know, I collect, among other things. I'm an inveterate collector. For those of you who don't know that, you haven't been listening. I really love to collect stuff. Now, I'm not talking about collect Picassos. I'm just a collector. For example, I collect fountain pens. Old fountain pens. This is something I love to collect. I collect old radios, just old radio sets, primarily ones of pre-1940 vintage, probably actually more pre-1937 vintage. There's other things like that I collect, but But I just love to collect things, not seriously, where you have the world's greatest collection of singing beer mugs. Not that kind of stuff. I just collect, that's all. And among other things I collect is old Automobiliana. Now, that doesn't mean collect old cars, but Automobiliana, stuff that pertains to automobiles. Because a lot of it has curious historical meanings in one way or another. Now, Automobiliana, for example, can consist of, say, an advertising poster. They have these posters. You see a poster in the Ford dealer, and they'll have a big picture. It'll say the new Mustang 2 or something. Well, collect those. Collect all kinds of things that pertain to cars, like old service manuals. That's always great. To collect a service manual, a sales brochure, for example, is great. All new cars. When you walk into a showroom, and you pick up one of these brochures, it says the new 1975 Chevy. You pick up this brochure, and it has different color pictures of the different models. Well, I'm just curious as to when that practice started. The practice of having a sales brochure. They look almost exactly the same today as they did some of the earliest examples I have of it. In other words, the form was set some time back, because I happen to have, for example, the sales brochures that were gotten from a dealership of a 1932 Auburns. Now, there's an exotic automobile. And yet the sales brochure looks very much like a sales brochure of today's car. It shows a color picture, it says various models and accessories you can get and so forth. And they're written in the same style, the overblown style. Styled for today's man of adventure. Styled to free you from worry. Drive the new 1932 worry-free, exciting sports style, and so on down the line. That's typical automobile copy, but the one I have today is really fascinating. I hold it up to you. You look at it carefully there. You can see it looks like a newspaper, and it is a newspaper. And it's called the Hudson and Terraplane News. The Hudson and Terraplane News, and it was a newspaper, an actual weekly newspaper, and I read the description of it. It looks like a little paper. It actually looks like a little... what it really looks like is a college paper. Wouldn't you say that it looks like a college paper? Almost exactly. If you saw this, if I took this off the front and I called it the Princeton Tiger or something, you'd say, well, or the Rutgers Tar Gum or whatever they call our paper. It looks like a college paper. It's got pictures, and it's set up pretty much like a college paper, but it's called the Hudson and Terraplane News. And underneath it, it says, published in the interest of the Hudson and Terraplane organization everywhere. And it's a newspaper that never went to drivers. It was only for dealers and salesmen. In other words, it was an interdepartment newspaper, and the kind of thing that the public would never see. So, for example, now, when was this published? Well, okay, I'll tell you when it was published. It was published in 1935. Now, that's a long time ago. And what was going on in America in 1935? That's right. It was in the middle of the Depression. And for those of you who know what eventually happened to the Hudson and Terraplane, you know that eventually the Hudson and Terraplane disappeared from the American scene. And they were a fine car in their day, incidentally, but they disappeared for one reason or another when the big companies sort of swallowed up all the other companies, and all the great cars of, let's say, the pre-World War II period were just not big industries. And they were swallowed up by General Motors and Ford and Chrysler. Such people as, Auburn is a good example of that. The Stutz, another example of that. The Lafayette, the Willys Knight. These were all cars that were part of that time. But here's a great, here's their lead article. Their lead article for the May issue of 1935 reads this way. Opening week of May Drive gives whirlwind start Jump in deliveries is indication of sales trend this month. And then in big headline it says, all factors favorable. And underneath it says, definite knowledge of purchasers helps in getting results. And here is the actual piece. It says, the first week of the Beat April contest started with a bang. By the way, this paper uses exclamation points constantly, all throughout it. Because remember, it's trying to get the salesman all pepped up. It's a pep paper to pep up the salesman. It says the first week of the Beat April contest started with a bang. There was a whopping increase in deliveries over the week before. And word from the field indicates that that was only a starter. Exclamation point. Several distributors who have talked with the factory in the last 4 days agreed that the first week looked fine. But they add, quote, watch the second week and the third. More exclamation points. The organization not only beat the week preceding the start of the contest, it also beat the corresponding week of 1934, when deliveries were decidedly heavy. More exclamation points. That means they probably delivered 6 cars. It is evident that many factors are all working together to make May an outstanding business month. The month itself is one of the best of the year for automobile sales. Added to this is the organization's determination to, quote, beat April and win the awards that the contest holds forth. Back of this, there is a tremendous and mounting wave of buyer acceptance built up through cars already in the hands of owners, newspaper, magazine, and radio advertising on an intensive scale, and the enormous bank of new prospects obtained through the 25-car prize contest in April. The effect of the May sales strategy in picking definite May buyers and concentrating on them is becoming more evident every day. Wow. Now that's the lead article. Now you want to hear some more here. Now here, for example, you think that you remember when they had the craze here a year or two ago of seeing how many guys you could stuff in a VW? You think that's new? Listen to this one. Try this one, friend. Look at this. They have a picture inside here. It says, "You're not seeing things. It really happened," and it shows a Hudson Terraplane. But for one thing, it has 19 Western Union delivery boys standing on the roof. Wait a minute. Think about that for a minute. Don't laugh. You figure if each kid, and they're not kids either. They all look like they're about 18 and about 6 feet 2, that each guy must weigh approximately 140, 150 pounds. Put 19 of those guys on a roof, and you've got a lot of people standing on the roof of a car. Can you imagine that happening today to your car if you put 19 people on the roof? Well, anyway, it says, this idea, staged recently in Detroit by the Aaron DeRoy Motor Car Company, has made Detroit public fully conscious of Hudson-built ruggedness and the solid safety of the roofs of steel on bodies of all steel. They'll do the same for you. Yeah, try this in your city in May. At left, the picture shows a Terraplane with more than its weight in Western Union messenger boys piled up on top of it. 3,029 pounds of messenger boy standing on the roof. Well, now, wait a minute. You laugh at that. Can you imagine putting 3,000 pounds of people on the top of your Pinto? Oh, wow. And here's a great publicity stunt they have here. It shows another Hudson Terraplane, and there's a guy sitting on the top of the car with a piano, and he's playing the piano. The piano is attached to the top of the car, and he's dressed in a tuxedo. And standing next to him is another guy wearing white ducks, elegant tuxedo-like thing, and he's got a big white carnation, and his hair is plastered down, and he's about to sing. And it says at the center, this is the center picture, it says Donald Novis, famous Columbia Broadcasting Company singer with his attractive accompanist and a 600-pound piano on platform built on the Terraplane's roof of steel so that the car could be driven without the risk of Mr. Novis and the accompanist or the piano sliding off. Now that's, is that Art Deco? I don't know. You see him driving around town with this guy singing Mother McCree. Oh, man. Now, their final, I think this is the greatest stunt of all. Their final stunt, it shows a Hudson, and it's really great looking. the Hudson, it shows chorus girls. They got together, 2,295 pounds of chorus girls, members of the Carla Turney dancing troupe, featured in all the Fox theaters, posing on America's only body, all of steel. And there's an entire crowd of chorus girls, and the way they're dressed is fantastic. I mean, if any of you Busby Berkeley fans, this is right in the middle of his period. All of the girls have high silk hats, black silk hats, and they've got like what looks like velvet tuxedos on, with great big white tuxedo-type lapels, and they're all sitting on. That really moves those cars, I'll tell you. Mr. Hudson himself had a column in this paper. Oh yes, there was a Mr. Hudson, and he had a column in this paper. Do you find this interesting? I mean, it's fascinating to look at, especially since you realize the hopes and the blasted dreams. And if I told you where I got this, it even is sadder. That this Detroit executive that I knew, said that when the Detroit factory of the Hudson people, when they went out of business and everything was all over, you know, you kind of think of an automobile company as something so big and so official that it doesn't have that kind of personal thing. He said, but he had a friend who at one time in his early days was a design engineer or something for the Hudson company. And he says when the company went out of business, they were just gone. That's it. It was all over. And he went to Detroit to pick up some papers or something that he had that belonged to him that were on file there. And the place was empty. It was just gone. The whole company was over and done with. And he went through the desk drawers in the company, when what was left of it. There was nobody there. It was all over. And he took out of the desk drawers, just as souvenirs, some of these old advertising things they had. And he took out some sales books and promotion things and so on. And he said he walked out of this plant, or what was left of it. It was practically dismantled. He says, and here were the offices of the president and the top executives, and the doors were all hanging off, and the glass was broken on the windows. He said it was really a fascinating thing to see, because this was a great name in automobiling at one time. But this was one of the things that he had. And here is the column from Mr. Hudson himself. It says, Terry Hudson says. That's the name of the column. Did you know that there was a Terry Hudson? Well, I didn't know it till I read this. And here he is. He looks like the front end. They have a profile shot of him, and he looks like the front of a Hudson Terraplane. You know, he's got that jutting nose sticking out there. And he says, Victor Hugo was one of the old boys, way back there, who wrote things that still have a lot of meaning today. That's why people still read his writings, I guess. There was one bit of smart thinking credited to him that certainly ought to be kept alive. It's mighty good Hudson and Terraplane business thinking right this minute. How's that for the salesman at work? Victor Hugo. Here's what he wrote, quote, he who every morning plans the transactions of the day and follows out that plan carries a thread that will guide him through the labyrinth of the most busy life. The orderly arrangement of his time is like a ray of light which darts itself through all of his occupations. But where no plan is laid, where the disposal of time is surrendered merely to the chance of incidents, chaos will soon reign. End of quote. And he says, you know, that's the self-same principle that we're applying right now in May. Instead of going through each day haphazardly, depending on each day to bring its own hits or misses, we're going to go out and get them. We're going to create our own incidents, and we're going to build them on a plan of our own. That's a good principle. Stick to it. Wow. That was the day of Babbitt, all right, wasn't it? And he has this long column about how you should organize your time. He seemed to be really hung on time organization. And he tells how to make a sale. The first step in a sale is knowing where to go to find a prospect. Well, you can't argue that, can you, Corny? I mean, there's no sense of trying to sell ice boxes up in the Arctic, right? Okay, you got to go where they need it, huh? And then you ask yourself these questions. What appointments do I have today? What time are they? And then you go out and make that sale. Go to that neighborhood. Face-to-face contacts are tremendous in making sales. Well, okay. And they gave awards. You want to see some of the awards? See, they gave these great awards to salesmen who made their quota for May. And some of these awards would be priceless Art Deco objects today. Look at that lamp. It's a magnificent brass lamp. And it says, built to the famous new scientific specifications of the Illuminating Engineering Society, a beautifully designed study and reading lamp. And that comes if you really push it over. And for you pen fans, they were also giving away an Oxford desk set made by the Parker Corporation. It's made of non-tarnishing chrome on black Carrara. Wow, that's pure Art Deco. Whee! And I have the names of some of these top dealers here. Do you want to know who the dealer was in New York of the Hudson? All right, it's right here. Let's see. H-I-J-K... L-M-N-O. I'm sorry to have to tell you this. Sorry to have to say it. New York's dealer did not make that list. They did not beat April in New York. However, Philadelphia did very well. Now, let's see if there was an individual, though, that did it. Now, New York. Okay. Here are salesmen. Listed on this page are the names of the Hudson and Terraplane salesmen who made 3 or more deliveries in the Beat April contest, May 6th to 11th inclusively. It says, get your delivery cards in early for next week's report. Okay. In New York, Leonard S. Norris of the Hudson and Terraplane Sales Corporation made a delivery of 6 cars in that week. I wonder where Leonard Norris is, or any of his relatives are listening tonight. Old Leonard gets on the radio. Here's another one. Fred Stone of the Hudson and Terraplane Sales Corporation of New York City. He did it. And here's another one from New York City. H.M. Thalheimer, also of the Hudson and Terraplane Sales Corporation. All 3 salesmen went over the top. Okay, you want to hear, maybe there are some Jersey types listening. So New Jersey, New Orleans. Well, New Jersey was running true to form. Nobody made it. Nobody made the list. H-I-J-K. This is a fascinating thing here. And of course, the entire, here's a great little item here. Little item in here. It's a special news item in the paper. It says, has anyone seen Pancho? On March 21st, 1935, we sold to Pancho Peters a Terraplane coach, serial number 519125, motor number 117576. Mr. Peters is a, quote, stunt driver, traveling under the name of either R.P. Gardner or Pancho Peters. He is probably playing one of the larger cities as a daredevil car driver. Payments have not been completed on this man's Terraplane, and we will pay a reward of $25 for return of the car. Please notify us if this man is appearing in your city. C.E. Jordan, H&S Motor Company of Memphis. Oh, there's flim-flam artists everywhere. Can't you see Pancho Peters being played by Robert Redford, driving his stolen Terraplane around? And now here's I think another great little piece. See, they have humor in this paper too. Now you want to hear the humor. It says, the headline reads, Niles paper Josh's George. An employee newspaper published by the Simplicity Pattern Company of Niles, Michigan, recently carried this item, quote, George DePire has become the owner of a new Hudson-built Terraplane, and as a result, it may be expected that the Niles shipping department will soon be controlled by an electric hand. Well, now, do you know what the electric hand was? You don't know, huh? Their little comment says, good electric hand publicity, don't you think? Electric hand was, if you know anything of the history of the automobile, and don't immediately write me and say, this was well before my time, buddy, that they had at that time an electro-select transmission. In other words, it was the forerunner to the automatic transmission, and it was operated electrically. It was called electric pre-selection, and they called it the electric hand. And, okay, you got it? Right. Now, let's see if I can give you any more interesting bits here. And here's a beautiful car, I'll tell you. Really magnificent example of a convertible. Wow, I'll tell you, it's really great. If you could pick up one of these, this is a real collector's item. It's a convertible Terraplane. And it shows this lady standing in front of it, and she's pure 1930s. I mean, it's so pure 1930s styles that it looks like she's faking it. You know, it's like somebody is doing it. And it says, Patricia Ellis, famous lady of the silver screen, smiles out at you from a streamlined background made by a Hudson convertible that she drove in her recent visit to Detroit. Miss Ellis, now back in Hollywood, visited her old hometown of Detroit recently, and the picture above was made during her visit. Patricia Ellis. Did you ever hear of her? Well, there she is. She had her moment in the sun. Now, you want to hear more about the electric hand? Okay, here's an item about that. Elliot M. Young, insurance agent of Littleton, Mass., traded in his car a year ahead of time, solely because of the electric hand with automatic clutch. His letter to the Elm Street garage, Hudson and Terraplane dealer, says, my recent order for a deluxe Terraplane convertible coupe would not have been given if it were not for the fact that an automatic clutch control were available. This is the year, you know, that I don't change cars. My perfect machine that you sold me last year is running fine, but this electric hand seems to be such an improvement, I'm not going to wait another year. Get my car ready. Well, that's the kind of stuff to feed the troops when sales are going down, right? Oh, wow. You know, I'll bet any money that this kind of stuff is going to develop now. I mean, you know, now that we're hitting these little rocky times economically, I'll bet companies are going to start having sales pep meetings. You know, I want all of you to show up tomorrow in the frozen food counter with a clean shirt on. I don't want to have no... Right? And I want you to be kind to the customers. It's all over. All that stuff we used to yell at them, that's done. You're got to be friends with them. Well, this to me is a great piece of Americana. It's all it can be called. Even if you're not interested in cars, it's an Americana bit. Now listen to this one. Now, here's a headline entitled "British Car Theft Ends with Tribute to Owners Hudson." And here's the story. Automobile thefts are rare in England, where close checks on car registrations and stern punishment for lawbreakers are traditional. When one does happen, it is not looked on as a minor sort of thievery, but as a major crime committed by, quote, gangsters. Such a theft happened recently at Croydon, outside of London. The car stolen was a Hudson 8, owned by T.T.C. Garrott, managing director of the Revita Company of Southwark Street, London, Southeast 1. Mr. Garrett's letter to Hudson Motors Limited of London, telling of the theft and later recovery of the car, is headed, quote, "A Gangster's Tribute." The letter says, 2 days before we had planned to take an Easter trip, I discovered my Hudson 8 had been stolen from its lock-up garage, where I live in Croydon. That's garage in England, right? Due to very worthy and expeditious work on the part of the police authorities, aided by their highly efficient wireless organization, the car was discovered abandoned in a street in Wimbledon within a few hours of the loss having been reported. When found, the car had in it a case containing several thousands of cigarettes, on top of which a note had been placed reading as follows, quote, "Whoever finds these cigarettes is welcome to them. Also the car, which gave an excellent performance when we were pulling our job." How about that now? Only in England. I mean, I kind of like that style of a guy stealing a car, pulling a job, and then leaving cigarettes for the guy. You know, he's giving him a tip, see, and then he puts a little endorsement of the car, see? And then the owner goes on to say, the performance must indeed have been excellent to have caused these, quote, gangsters to have paused in their ultimate getaway to allow themselves sufficient time to pay it this written tribute. which I feel should be of some interest to you. Yours very truly, T.T.C. Garrett. Well, now for the for the benefit of those who don't know the history of the automobile, I'd like to point out that the Hudson Terraplane was indeed the favorite getaway car used by top bank robbers of the period, which was 1934, 1935. As a matter of fact, there is a famous story about how one of them, who recently, incidentally, a movie was made about him, and I'll ask a question. Can you identify who it was? This was a famous bank robber, not Bonnie and Clyde. No, it was not Dillinger. A famous bank robber who, at one point, was known always for pulling his jobs with Hudson Terraplanes. He had black Hudsons, and he had built into the back of the Hudson, he had a device that was built over the gas tank in the back, so that when he was being pursued, he could pull a lever on the dashboard, and the thing opened, and it sprayed Carpet-Tex all over the road behind him. Now, he also had he had another one that when he was really in trouble, see, he'd pull another one, and it would just all over the street behind him. He would lay down a thick film of diesel oil, just spread it out there, so if anybody's following, he's in trouble. Now, he had a further trick that he used to do. This guy also had license plates that were changeable while you're driving. He had a device made that had about 5 license plates in it. So it would just flip over, and next thing you know, there's a guy driving an Oklahoma car. See? Now, he did one thing that was famous. This is a legendary story, this guy, that he wrote to the Hudson Car Company. He was a very famous bank robber. He wrote to the Hudson Car Company a series of letters, which are still in existence someplace. Wrote to them saying that he's so delighted with their car that any time they would like to use his name and or picture in an advertising campaign, he would be delighted to do it, and not only that, he would let them do it free. He wouldn't even charge them for this. So the Hudson Terraplane was a really goer. Now, what did Terraplane stand for? The word Terraplane. Well, think about it for a minute. Terra, Earth. It was a plane of the Earth. It flew low. And do you want another one here? No, it flew low, and in fact did fly low. So that was the Hudson Terraplane. And this piece of Americana here is so great because it's all filled with little slogans. Get up early. The early bird catches the worm. Pound the streets, and good fortune will pound its way to your door. I mean, I like these things. And all the way through the paper is those little expletives like the man that gets up early is the man that retires early. And the man that keeps his eye on the sale is the man who will make the sale. You know, well, you know what happens. A guy goes out to make a sale. Next thing you know, he winds up with a chock full of nuts, and he winds up down at the bar, and he never makes the sale. And there's this little guy with sharp eyes down there making it. Well, this is what they did. Now, here are the pictures of the all-star team published on the back page. These are the team members, team captains of the all-star team of Hudson salesmen, and let's see who it was in our district. Now, we would be called the Northeastern District, wouldn't we? Oh, yes. A Mr. W.J. Case of New York City was the district manager, and he says that his best dealership, by the way, was in Providence, Rhode Island. It was the R.W. Powers Motor Company, and they completed 97.7% of their quota for the last year. New York City was about halfway down, in spite of its 3 stars. It's really great. I want this is looking at this thing. It's like looking at a whole compendium of lost and gone dreams of these people, because the Hudson Motor Car Company finally wound up quietly drifting out of business in the I believe it was the early 50s, and it disappeared forever. Incidentally, even in the last days of the Hudson Company, it was a terror, that car. If you have a chance to ever go to the Daytona Speed Museum, you know, the big track at Daytona where they run the Daytona 500, right there, standing among all the other cars, is the first car to ever break a 100-mile-an-hour average in one of their big races. And what do you think it is? It's a Hudson Hornet. Oh, yeah, the Hudson Hornet. What were some of the other Hudson names of that? The Hudson Hornet, the Hudson, what? They also built one of the smallest, the Wasp, the Hudson Wasp. They built one of the smallest cars, too. They were one of the first people to come out with a compact. What was that called? The Hudson Jet. Yeah, but lost and gone, along with Packard, Studebaker, Nash. There was a goodie. The Willie's Night. Do you know that I did one of the first television color commercials? When color first came in on TV, I did the color commercials for the Willys. They had a car called the Willys Bermuda. And that was when they were turning out the Jeep, the Willys Jeepster. But the Bermuda was their attempt to make it into the luxury car class. The Willie, and there I stood next to it, the Willys Bermuda. And in the next booth doing the color commercials were Bob and Ray. What do you think they were doing commercials for? Lost and gone. The Packard Golden Eagle. So, would you please? Hudson Terraplane News.